Hello and welcome to a little tutorial here. Today I will be showing you how to set up the AK2000 gimbal, both in this form, which is what I like to call the final form of the AK series gimbals, which is with the cage and everything. And I'll also show you how to set up in the normal form, which is what you get out of the box without purchasing the gimbal cage. So before we begin, I just want to let you know these are very affordable gimbals and they're very powerful for what you get. And I do encourage looking at these gimbals if you're considering buying one or you're considering getting into the field of gimbal operating. These, specifically the AK2000, has been a workhorse for me when it comes to all my little videos I do, so I really suggest it. Anyways, let's begin by going into the first gimbal stage. So for the first configuration here, this is the stuff you generally get with the Feiyutech AK2000, which is the top module here, as well as your power stick or the actual control module, whatever you want to call it, as well as batteries, little tripod here that we will definitely need that screws right in with a 1/4-20, as well as your mounting plate here. So to begin, you need to unscrew the bottom cap here on your control module. And this is where you will put in your batteries. Now it comes with 4 batteries and they're all specific. They're specific styles. They're a 2,200 milliamp hour batteries. There are 4 of them. So these aren't AA's or AAA's, so you can't just swap them out with other ones. So first, you want to throw these in how they specifically want them. Then you close it up here. And then you take your bottom plate, you just screw it back on like so. And then you're ready to set up the rest of the gimbal. Now, this part here is the balancing part, which is the most difficult part of setting up a gimbal. You have to make sure that your camera not only stays in place in any direction, but you also want to make sure that it has enough room to articulate through the full motion of the actual motors. So before we do that, you just attach your actual gimbal here, screw that on. Everything's pretty self-explanatory with that stuff. Next, you want to put on your camera to your plate. Now, I find it best to put the camera as far back on the plate as you can. This way you can get the center of mass more towards the middle of the plate and it's not up towards the front, so you're not sliding the plate all the way back. Plus, you will see here in a second that it is very important to have room in the back with this specific gimbal. Some other gimbals you can get away with this, but this specific one, you want to have that room. So just slide your plate on, and before you even do any of this, make sure you have your batteries and your SD card inside your camera. Now it is time to balance the gimbal. Throw the gimbal right in front of you on a flat and level surface. Make sure it is facing the right direction, which is this way, and then you want to slide it on. I'm gonna do it from the side here. This specific gimbal, you will feel a little click whenever it's all the way on. So right here, so when you're balancing the gimbal, you want to balance it on each axis. You have 3 axes here. This one, this one, this one. And then you also kind of have the axis of the plate. So what you want to do is you want to go through each and every single one multiple times and make sure that the gimbal is balanced. And when I say balanced, I don't mean that it's standing in this specific position here. You want to make sure that the gimbal itself, whenever you move the camera stays. That is a properly balanced gimbal. I used to think that balancing the gimbal was all just this, but you will notice a lot of issues. You will notice a lot of jittering, a lot of stuttering when you're going to do motions. So the first axis you want to start with is the plate. You want to make sure that is balanced in a good solid place. And I think right here is good. And there's a little pull tab here. You pull all the way back, make sure that it's tight. Next axis here is this top one. Now, I just realized I accidentally kind of have this already balanced. Normally when you put it in the case, you would close all these all the way, which that would mean undoing these little knobs and pushing it. So let's do that. You would move it to a different spot so it fits in the proper case. So right now it is not balanced. It's staying still this way, but as soon as I move it to any other, it wants to go back to this position. You want the gimbal, as I said before, to stay in one position. So what you do is you want to move it. And for this axis, it's best to keep it upright and see where it's falling. So it's falling this way, it's falling forward. So you want to bring it back. Right there, it's starting to pull backwards. It's starting to fall the other way. So you want to bring it forward. You want to make sure in this axis that it is centered like that. Tighten that down and see where you're at. So go back to this plate here and you're noticing it's tilting back. So you want to bring this plate forward a little bit. Bam, that axis there is stable. Next is this one, and this is your right and left movement. You want to make sure this is definitely stable. So normally you would have it like this, and it would be very loose and dreary and whatever. You want to bring it up. You want to see where it's going. So it's going that way. So you want to pull it the other way. Still pulling that way, pull it back. And there are a lot of my little tiny movements that you need to do to figure out, is this the perfect spot or is it not? Right now, that's seeming like the perfect spot. Bam. So the last part about balancing this gimbal is the underside here. This is your pan. This isn't the easiest portion to balance because the proper way to do it is to balance it like this. Hold it out like this and see where it goes. You want it to stay wherever. But the issue with this gimbal I've noticed is that right now it is as far forward as I can put it. And it still will not balance properly. So what I found out is that as long as you have it all the way forward or relatively close for your pan, you'll be fine. As long as you're not doing any big major movements where you're moving it like that and that pan has to compensate for it. Because you got to remember, these are all electronic motors trying to counterbalance certain movements, trying to make sure your camera's steady depending on what setting you're in. So that right here is the first configuration before you turn it on. To turn it on, all you have to do is press the power button. It'll wake up. And in the actual menus itself, there is a payload setting. And I have that on auto adapt all the time just because I don't really change a lot of the payload on the actual gimbal. But you have 3 levels in there that you can choose from, and that will help with the counterbalance. Now, if you start noticing your gimbal sort of drifting to one end or another, you can go into settings and you can hit calibration. And what that does is that basically calibrates the gimbal for the payload you have on there right now. And it's saying calibration complete, just escape that. And then gimbal in stage 1 is complete. So what is stage 2? Well, Feiyutech actually offers a ring for this model. The ring, in my opinion, is the way to go with the gimbal. You got these 3 lovely segments here. They're all carbon fiber, which is amazing. And they all work with the Feiyutech AK2000 and 4000. So this is actually relatively simple to set up. It's not hard at all. What you do have to do is you have to take off the top plate here, as well as your tripod legs to put it on. But before that, I kind of like to get the ring set up. And the ring's straightforward. You have little pins on the inside here, and those line up with the pins on the other end. And there's only one way to do this. So it is almost impossible to screw up. Get it? Screw. So right now the ring is actually ready to have the gimbal put into it. Normally you would want to remove your camera when you're moving between these two pieces of equipment, but just to make it flow a little bit quicker, we're just gonna keep it on. And you basically go in the reverse order of before when taking this apart. You wanna take off the actual gimbal head itself from your controls here. And this again has pins and other little diode things that help line it up. This can sometimes be kind of finicky. And you gotta be careful too with a lot of these, because there are, you can bend the pins. And bending the pins is absolutely terrible. You're going to have to get a whole other unit and you don't want that. So take off the tripod legs here, line the top part up with this part here. And don't be afraid to sort of push this up like I did. You're allowed to do that. This is carbon fiber, so it's not like it's gonna break easily. These aren't frail at all. I've actually dropped this ring by itself before and it's perfectly fine. So you just wanna screw that in and then bam, you have the ring kind of set up. Now check your balance again, make sure everything's going good. Everything seems good. So you can turn it on and it's the same procedure as before. Turn on, make sure your payload settings are correct, make sure it's calibrated, and you're basically ready to go. And that's how you get the ring set up itself. So the biggest reasons why I run the ring itself is because of the accessories you can put on this. When you're running it in the normal mode that you get it in, it's actually a little bit harder to put on, say, a field view monitor or follow focus. With this, you can put on a whole bunch. I actually have a field view monitor I run for this gimbal rig, which is right here. It's a little 5-inch. Have a 3-foot long HDMI cable to micro HDMI. And all you have to do with this, we'll put this back in front of me, is there are 2 cold shoe mounts on the top of this gimbal rig. You just attach it to one of them, screw in the cold shoe, get it pretty tight, and then you want to connect it. And what I like to do with connecting wires to a gimbal rig, I want to make sure the entire thing's set up first, and then I run the wire, and then I plug it in. Because if you give this enough slack, the gimbal's not really going to notice that the wire's here, and it's really going to take into account the weight right here. And there you have it. That is how you set up the Feiyutech AK2000 as it comes, as well as the carbon fiber cage that you can purchase for the AK2000 and AK4000 gimbals. I really suggest these gimbals. They're really nice. They're some of the best bang for your buck out there. And honestly, they're just really good quality. I'm really surprised by the quality, and the footage can turn out amazing if you know how to use the tools properly. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care.